So again, start with introduction. My name is Tashieanna O'Connor. I've been doing this you know, childcare since I was a kid. I used to raise my siblings while my mom worked. I'm from Jamaica originally. And come to America. And when I was in middle school, I started doing it for parents while they go to work. You know, at 13, you could do it. And then I realized my passion for it, right? And what even drove me more is when the loss of my son,
Oh,
drove me to do this more. A little about you.
so I have four kids. My oldest is legally adopted. So I was actually her court appointed child advocate when she was a foster child. And then I kept her. When I met her, I was 27 and she was 14. And now she is 32 and I will be 46 next week. So I've been in her life now longer than I haven't been. But my daughter is a special story of overcoming trauma and really getting yourself together and making lemonade out of lemons. My second child is my first biological child. And so he is also a doll of a human being, but he was born with a complete bilateral cleft lip and palate. So he's had five surgeries and he's probably going to have a bunch more. And so we have some perspective and insight into having a craniofacially different child in our home. My second pregnancy, so child number three, but second biological, I almost died giving birth. And I know some people like joke about that, but I really did almost die. I had acute preeclampsia and my baby was born at 27 weeks gestation. So he was 1 pound, 14 ounces and was in a NICU for a really long time. And then he came home with a bunch of special like heart monitors and all kinds of stuff. And then I had my baby who was the healthiest, like easiest baby of all. And I still don't know how I got pregnant with him. I really don't. I mean, I know how I got pregnant with him,
God
but
have a plan. Let's put it that way.
it
God
was not
have
planned.
a plan.
He was not planned at all. So the book that I wrote is really all about I have a individual section on each of my four kids. And so I cover all kinds of topics in there. Like I cover drug addiction because that was kind of my adopted daughter's story with her biological mother. I talk a lot about drug addiction. I talk about being an adoptee, foster care. I talk a lot about educational neglect. I talk about IEPs and 504 meetings for these little people. I talk about literacy. Like, I just kind of talk about all of the things, right? That, like, you really do kind of need to know about in order to be a parent in the world these days, internet safety, all that kind of stuff. I talk a lot about just generalized like safety, like what identifies a healthy childcare provider? What does that look like? How do we keep our kids safe from perverts and predators and that kind of thing? What are red flags versus green flags? That's kind of where I'm coming from.
So what drove you? You said 27 was really young when you met your daughter. Well, that's your daughter. I always said giving birth don't make your mom, right?
Yeah,
Just like making the baby don't make your dad, right?
exactly.
What drove you into that direction in the first place? Because what you're saying resonate with me. And I don't know if you listened to any of my previous podcasts. It resonate with me in the court system. We're gonna dive into that a little later. What drove you into being an advocate in the court in the first place? That's such young age.
So I think part of it has just been always kind of who I am. Like, I was raised in evangelical Christianity, which I don't necessarily subscribe to all of the evangelical beliefs at this time in my life. But some of the good things that I learned were about serving your community and helping your fellow man, and all of those things in the Bible that really talk about caring for others. And those things really resonated with me as a child, and they also helped shape my personality, I think. I think a lot of that, the healthy aspects of spiritual influence were a big deal with me when I was a kid. And so I graduated from undergrad. So I went to college at Virginia Tech and I graduated the year of 9/11. So in 2001, the job market crashed. I couldn't get a job anywhere. And so I went to law school. And when I was in law school, all I really wanted to do was help people. Like there were definitely people in my class who went to law school because they wanted to get rich, but I didn't. I went to law school because I genuinely, in the core of my soul, wanted to help people. And so I had a job outside of Philadelphia where I ran a child welfare agency that worked with the court system. And so I learned like a crash course between the ages of 22 and 25 in what like stuff I had never experienced before, like what it looks like to truly grow up in poverty. Like I walked up in homes where I would flip a light switch on and roaches would scatter. I mean, I really saw what some of these people endure in poverty and in homes that are just dangerous. And so that really became a passion of mine. So I finished law school. I went to work for Big Law for 2 years because I had to, because I had student loan debt. And then I just had this moment in my life where it was like an epiphany. And I was like, I have to go back to doing that because that's where I belong. Like, as hard as that work was and as horrible as it was, that was truly where I belong. And so I volunteered in my community to go back to being a court appointed advocate. And I got Tanya's case. And sweet Lord, it was one of the worst cases I'd ever seen. And I think part of that is because she is an example of a child who probably really should have come into foster care a long time before she actually did. She actually wasn't put into care until she was 14. And honestly, she probably needed to go into it years and years before that. But by the time I got her, or by the time I got her case, a lot of damage had been done. And I'm not going to lie to you, she was difficult. I mean, she was a runaway when I first met her. She was spitting in social workers' faces. Like she was a lot. She really was. But all I saw was trauma. And I was like, there is something under, like, there's a fire there that is being misdirected. But what could we do if we could show her another way? And so I just really dedicated. I didn't have my own biological children at the time. And I just really dedicated my life to showing her another example and just being there for her. Because all she needed was an adult. That's literally all she needed. She needed some adult to love her unconditionally and to believe in her and to convince other adults who did not believe in her to give her a shot and believe in her. And over time, I mean, there were moments where I would tell that girl, honey, you just need to, you need to study for this test in school because I think you could do it. And to be honest with you, I didn't know whether she could or not. I had no idea if this child was capable of finishing high school. Literally, no one in her family had finished high school. I had no idea if she could do it or not. But I just kept speaking excellence into her. And
Mhm.
today she has a college degree.
Wow.
She has a decent job. I mean, like if you met her, you would have absolutely no idea. She is unrecognizable right now compared
Mm.
to who she was at 14. And I truly believe to the depths of my being that all of our children who come from these traumatic situations can be redirected. We might not be able to save all of them. Some of them definitely do come into foster care too late. I mean, I think she came in too late, but she still came in at a point where we could salvage her and she was still savable. And I genuinely do believe that a lot of the violence that we see in America in that, 16 to 21-year-old age range is trauma. And I genuinely believe that it can be redirected. I just need people to recognize what's happening and be willing to put forth the effort that those human beings need.
That's my
I'm sorry.
no, 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 no. 'Cause you know what? As you're saying that, I see me in that 14-year-old girl, right? Like I tell you a little bit about my story, and I wish, as you're speaking, I wish I had someone like you when I was 17, gave birth to my first son. Maybe he would have still been alive today to advocate for me because I tell him my background. I came from Jamaica, came here. I have my family, but no family support because I was told that I just bring you here to be a maid, right? By my grandmother. You wasn't supposed to go to school. I didn't bring you here for that. So whatever you want, that's not what I bring you here. And being a child who's been, molested at a young age, at the age of 5 all the way up. And I was traumatized. So I see me and her, right? And then when I figure I had my son and I didn't know what to do. I
No.
didn't know what to do. I'm in the court system. The court looked at me and said, well, this older man that I was with, the court gave him the baby because he had everything. His family had everything. And I lived nowhere but on the street. I didn't know about welfare, food stamps, because that's not in me. I wanted to work. That's all I
And
want.
you had no guidance. You had no adult to stand there and say, this is what we need to help. You had nobody to help you navigate that system and no
Mhm.
frame of reference. You were set up to fail.
Right. And I did not, right? I had to fight for it. And when the judge gave my son over to his dad, and he's like, as long as you get your apartment, you're gonna get it. I never missed a court date. The dad never showed up ever. He showed up one time, and that was it. Never have to show up again. And when the judge gave him the custody, I said, "Your Honor, I'm gonna let you know," because he was abusive. He stabbed me. I have in the winter time have my face go numb, stabbed me here, stabbed me in the back of my neck. Really abusive, extremely abusive. So, I didn't know I was lost. And the system even did me wrong more. And when I try to show them I have water protection, I show them they didn't believe me. And this is the thing that, thank God, your God sent, your angel that came in with this young lady and saved her at the age of 14, right? I believe it's never too late for someone. That's my
You are right.
belief, right?
You
Because you could be 100 years old and someone just like you come along and change us,
Yeah.
right? And when the passing of my son, when he died, I didn't even know. I haven't seen my son to say goodbye. They didn't let me attend the funeral. I'm still trying to heal. It's been a long time. He would have been 30 years old. He died at 18 months. His dad suffocated him. Then
Oh,
went to jail. Then went to jail because they had money to pay. The mom threatened me and tell me if I press charges, she'll make sure I never see the light again. So what direction do I turn into? The court system failed me. They gave me an appointed attorney, and the only thing he was trying to do is have me be his girlfriend.
I wish I could tell you that I'm surprised by that, but I'm not. There is tremendous abuse with male lawyers. I've been sexually harassed by other male attorneys, and absolutely no one seems to care. It shocks me that in North Carolina, at least, it wasn't until the late 90s that anyone made a rule that said you, as an attorney, are not allowed to have sex with your client unless you had a pre existing sexual relationship with them before they became your client. Like, that is not something that we should have to tell people, is essentially not to trade sex for legal services. And professionally, that infuriates me. But also, what a way to re-victimize you.
Yeah, I figure I'm gonna tell you I went along with it. We never went to the sex part because he took a hotel room, and I was scared. I'm like, I can't leave from Jamaica where I'm being molested and come to America, and I feel like I was being molested again, but this time of a higher power. And I'm like, if I tell somebody, then I'm gonna lose my son. So I didn't show up, and I didn't say nothing. You're the first person, literally the first person I've ever told. I've never shared this story.
Tashiana, thank you for trusting me with that.
I'm never, so when you talk about that young lady, I'm just seeing myself at her age, right? I'm never, even anyone, if my husband here, I've been married for over 26 years and he never knows that. I never told him. And I went ahead and I have my kids. And this is what drove me into childcare. When I lost my son, I figure I went into a survival mode where I'm like, I have to protect kids.
Yeah.
I I have to do something where I will fight for those kids. I will show up at the school for those kids. I will show up in the court system for those kids. I will be the one, the voice for the voiceless.
Right. You were going to fix what you were not able to do for your first child.
Exactly. And this is what bring me here today and been doing this for the past 24 years. I've been doing it. And believe me, you could talk to my parents. I do show up at school. When
I
these
bet you
kids
do.
fall,
I bet nobody messes with your kids.
when these kids fall, I'm there for them. And these kids fall, I'm like, no, the mom is trying. I'm at the mom's side. I'm like, you're not going to take the mom's here.
You know what I find fascinating about that? My daughter, she has a 6-year-old now. And so she is homeschooling her, which I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? Because that is a lot. And she just says to me, Mom, I can't let any of the stuff that happened to me ever happen to her. And she's very overprotective, which that can be a problem in and of itself. But I've also seen so many parents who are neglectful and who hurt their kids
Mhm.
that I'm like, you know what? I can't chide her for caring. I can't chide her for being there because her daughter really is safe. I mean, ain't nobody gonna mess with Leonie. Tanya will
Exactly.
tear you up.
And
And
that's me.
I mean, she will tear you up. But I see that a lot. I also see that in our trauma survivors too. And I think the school systems often they don't understand where people like you and my daughter are coming from.
Right.
They think you're just up in there showing yourself and acting all kinds of a fool.
Mhm.
And they do not understand where that comes from.
Right.
And I really feel like if they did, if they truly got it, I can't help but believe that would make a difference somehow.
It would. I believe it will make a difference. But you know what? We live in a world where people refuse to understand each other, right? And what I notice, people is about themselves instead of they don't show compassion anymore. It's easier to dismiss someone than to show compassion towards their brothers and sisters. It's easier to blame somebody else for what we go through than stand responsibility or accountability. Like I tell my children, my two oldest girl, both of them are in the military right now. My second oldest, she have a son. I have a grandson. He's 2 years old, and now she's having a little girl. She and her husband are together. They both in the military. So yeah, and I'm very overprotective. I have nine, and well, would have been nine. I have eight children. When you say four, I'm like, okay. I have, I have eight. And within this daycare, what I see and I hear, a lot of providers is just as bad as these parents,
Yeah. I've seen that too.
right? A lot of educators, they get in it just for the money. They don't get in it for the protection and what they are. But then, how do we go back to you? How do we put a step where we could educate these providers and educate parents and show them on a common ground of how to understand children, right? Because even in the care that I have, I see parents, if they disagree with you, something that you're not doing, they would just pull their children out and put them from daycare to daycare to daycare, right? Which is not good for the children. It's teaching them, number one, not to for attachment, right? It's creating trauma in that child. If that
Right.
child is okay, if that child is stable, if that child is loved, and you pull them from that love, you're telling them no. So you're already creating trauma
Right.
in these children, and from 0 to 5, right, is the most critical year of a child life. That's when you form their foundation, that, tell them what love, nourishing, and compassion is. And when I see parent does this, how can I and other educators that listen to this program, how can we educate them and show them? What can we do from your expertise?
So I've seen two programs that have specifically addressed this area in my community, and I thought both of them were really good. One of them focused on mothers who were incarcerated. So my county had a community, for lack of a better term, of mothers who never got locked up for anything serious, but it was just like dumb stuff. But they were just a revolving door in the jail, but all of them had children. And so the goal for that population was to get those women to connect with their children so they would have a reason to stop getting locked up. And then we had another population that was our teenage moms. And so one of the things that we identified with both of those groups is number one, they didn't understand what trauma was. and that almost all of them had been traumatized in some capacity because no one had ever taught them what trauma was. They just thought that their way of life was normal because no one had ever showed them anything differently. The other thing that we identified is that what they really needed was an adult woman to stand and be a mentor and a support. Because in so many of those cases, their mother was dead, doing drugs, not around, or had some sort of mental health problem herself. So when they did need to do things like ask their mom for help, they had no guidance with things like their pregnancies, how to raise their children. Even as they got older and started to go into menopause, they had no female that they could talk to about anything. And it's very difficult to go through your life as a woman anywhere without an adult female to mentor you. So, in both of those groups, they had a leader, the leader of the local jail, the jail group, which she also never called it the jail. She called it the embassy suites. So that way, if she ran into one of those women after they got out and she said, I know you from the embassy suites, then people, it wasn't like she was talking about them being in jail. But she created a community for those women where they could reach out to her and ask her whatever they needed to ask. You know, she was very careful about not giving them money, but she would give them guidance, friendship, and emotional support. And we kind of had the same situation with the teen moms, but the teen moms did have like a baby buck system where they could earn money for diapers and formula. So I think going back to your question, what would help? The things that I've seen help are strong women who are able to mentor other women. Because what I did for Tanya was I simply believed in her and I gave her an adult woman who she could talk to about her life. And I think that is what Andre does with those women in the jail, and it's what LaShonda does with the teenage mothers. I think that for your parents, we should probably assume that most of them are struggling, that they have no idea what they're doing, because most of us don't as new parents. And things like lunch and learns, where, or, a meeting before daycare opens where we keep your children for an hour for free and we teach you things that you need to know, or programs like this is how much we recommend you read to your child. We'll give you, bring a dentist in. Like we're giving you free dental kits. You need to learn how to make your kids brush their teeth so that they're not 10 with their teeth falling out. Getting into those just basic things that you need to teach early childhood, teaching them about attachment. So many of us, especially as mothers, we love our babies. We genuinely love our babies. And if we can get mothers to connect with their babies and to feel empowered to do things, I think that makes a huge difference. I think our problem is that we have women who just don't have the support that they need.
You're right, because I hear it a lot from my parents. And I just speaking of women, I just want to navigate a little bit from female and go into the male section.
Yes,
What you
ma'am.
say about single fathers? What advice do you have for them? Because I did an episode on single fathers where I seen it's like the fathers are now leading where I'm seeing, right? It's like single fathers are now becoming the single mom. While
Yeah.
mom is like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. And single fathers are now stepping up. Single fathers are now the one that said, but they're so overwhelmed because they're told, be a man, be tough, do this, do that. So how do we, yeah, we have a guide for mothers, right? We have a whole blueprint for mothers, but we missing the other half.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think probably part of it is also just mentorship from other men who can help them with that, but also just providing them with the education that they need as well. Like, I think that educational component is really key. Like, a lot of fathers just don't know the things that their children need. I mean, I feel like I teach my husband, he would probably tell you that. Like, I think I taught my husband so much stuff when our children were little about, like, no, they need a routine. Like, they've got to go to bed at a particular time because if they don't, their behavior is going to be awful and then you're going to have to deal with it. I think so often like men just need that educational component as well. So often, I'll say my granddaughter's father. who we love. We get along great with him. He's been with my daughter for like 10 years. But I'll say something to him and he's like, I never knew that. And I'm like, that seems like it should be common sense, but it's not. It's not. That men are socialized differently than we are. And
Mhm.
so I think just recognizing that their brains are different and giving them also the education and the support and just taking shame away. I think a lot of people feel really ashamed if they feel like the mother abandoned everybody.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge level of shame. And I think also just telling people, like, look, guilt and shame are worthless emotions. Those emotions have never helped anybody do better. And you can't get the help that you need if you're ashamed to ask for help or you're ashamed to ask the things you don't know. So I think also just creating a safe space where you can ask whatever you need to ask.
Right. As they say, shame, I think. But when I tell him he's a single father, he's like, well, even though the mother lived in another country, he's like, well, she fall. And I never thought of that maybe he feel ashamed to know that, okay, I'm in a single father category. And the other one, when he's like, well, the mother, she's in a different state, but she talked to the kids on the phone. As he's saying that, I think they rationalize. I'm not
Yeah,
a single father. If
right.
I'm ashamed to tell, like you said, tell someone I'm a single dad. I'm embarrassed to tell someone the woman don't stay with me because then they're gonna look at it like they will look at us, right?
That's
We should
exactly
have
right.
choose better. We
That's
should have
exactly right.
choose better, right?
Right. It's your fault somehow. And and I see this over and over and over again. If your marriage is doing great, you're probably just real lucky.
Right.
Like, nobody ever walks down an aisle to get married and thinks this is going to go horribly. If you thought it was going to go horribly, you wouldn't have ever gotten in that relationship to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You get in a relationship because somebody has convinced you it's going to turn out a certain way, and it probably should turn out that way. And when it doesn't, that doesn't make it your fault. I mean, for many of us, it's bad luck, or some of the time I also just think, what is going on with that person? Like, I cannot imagine abandoning my kids. I just can't. But yet we see people in society do it all the time. And I'm sure that they have their reasons for that. And I'm sure their reasons make sense to them. But it's not a failure on behalf of the parent who stayed and tried to do what they could.
And it's all come back to what you said earlier, trauma, right?
Exactly. It's all about trauma.
They have in trauma and they don't seek counseling and seek advice and have that guidance.
That's
So,
right.
and the way to go about it is like, you know what, I'm not doing it to a child and leave the child alone. You know, these dads that I've seen so many dads, and there's so many call of single fathers. And I really wish, I don't know if they have a community for them that they could call. I know for single moms, you said the jail, the prison, the jail, the outdoor, the teenager, the mom have so much support system,
Yes.
but they don't.
They don't. They absolutely don't.
And I think that when I talk to them and they coming in and I'm giving them the motherly advice, I mean, some of them are my age and older, and younger, and I'm giving them this advice and I'm not a man, right? I don't know. Like you said, their brain are wired differently, but I could give them, and I'm still giving them from a woman's perspective. But I think we need a form of community where safe haven for guys to call and say what they're going through and not feel like you said guilty of
Yeah.
being a single parent or it's my fault. I'm a man. For her not staying with me, it's got to be something wrong with me.
Right. And that's a horrible anytime somebody's carrying around shame, it hurts and it doesn't help. Nobody ever got better because they feel guilty or shameful about something. Anger's fuel. Anger will make you change your behavior or modify your behavior. Even sadness over time serves its purpose. But guilt and shame don't do anything but make you feel bad.
Back to providers, educators, and teachers, and that's dealing with special needs kids. What advice would you have for them, especially an educator that have no experience and never seen it before? Because I hear from educators, I don't know what I'm doing. Miss T, they call me Miss T. What can I do? Can you help me? Listen, I have this child that's not listening. I have this child that won't sit still. I just let the child do whatever and they would tear everything apart. And how can you to that bridge, that connection between a child that have ADHD, that have autism? What advice do you have to them that to have that connection?
I think one of the best places to start with that is to study ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. I find that people just by and large have no idea what the ACE scores are. So the ACE scores were studied in the early 1990s by a doctor named Dr. Vincent Folletti. And what he was originally doing was he was having an obesity study. So he had folks who came in who were 100, 200 pounds overweight, and he would help them lose it. And they would look and feel great, but then they would automatically gain it all back. And he was like, what's going on? We made so much progress. How did we get back here? They brought them back and met them with social workers. And the social workers would ask them, one of the questions was, how old were you when you had your first sexual experience? And these people would say 4, 5, 6. In almost every circumstance, they found common themes. There were histories of childhood sexual abuse. There were histories of parents going to jail for one thing or another. A parent died when they were little. They were verbally or emotionally abused. They never had things like food, water, toilet paper in the home. So there were all kinds of things going on in the house. And then as they've studied that over time, what they've learned is that growing up that way, if you're not going to therapy and really studying the trauma and getting that trauma response, like having awareness of it and getting it under control, it leads to things like cancer, diabetes, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders. It really does make people physically ill as they grow up. And so I think the best place to start with educators is helping them see this child may have a high ACE score. There's actually a PDF, it's a one-page PDF that's available, it's readily available on the internet, that's called the Adverse Childhood Experience Test or the Adverse Childhood Experiences PDF. I talk about that in my book. You pretty much take that and you count up how high your score is. And for people who have a score over 7, it can be really bad situation unless you get that under control. So I think having teachers who understand that is going to be helpful. And then I also think, most childcare providers I think are better than average about keeping children in a routine. But I think it's just really important to focus on routine for those kids. People in trauma have no predictability of what's happening to them next, which keeps them in a constant state of fight or flight. And if you can get them to a point where when they come to the school, they feel safe, huge difference, like game changing difference.
And what's the name of your book?
It's called Tumbleweeds.
Tumbleweed. And how
Yeah.
can they find it?
It's going to be available on Amazon in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you just be able to put in my name and Tumbleweeds and it should pop right up. It's not available yet because it's in the final stage of like I don't even understand all that stuff, but it's in the final stage of whatever like Amazon does before they release the book. But back to your question, I think an understanding of adverse childhood experiences is really critical for your educators to be able to see what they're dealing with and then just keeping the most stable, predictable plan every day. We do the same thing at the same time because that's what kids in trauma really need. They thrive in a routine. And I think that's a huge thing for single dads too. Well, really for everybody. Kids thrive in a routine. They're going to do better when they have a bedtime that's predictable, a nap time that's predictable. They know when they're going to eat. They just do better. And I mean, I think any teacher ever will say they know what happens when the routine gets off because the kids just lose it. It goes to chaos if the routine gets changed. That strictness is important.
Yeah. Okay. You give provided that blueprint and we follow it. But how do we share that with certain moms? Because I like my experience. I have children, we have a routine, they come and children do great. But then say they were parents like 5 days. They come back, they go right back, and we have to consistently redo the same thing over and over again. Like we going back from square one. How
Uh,
do we share this with parents that don't want to do it, that tells you I don't have time, right? Because I hear it. I don't have time for this. I'm too busy working. When I come home, I'm tired. Did you feed them? Did you give them food? Did you make sure they eat and after just put them to bed?
So, first of all, that is frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating for the provider. And it's also heartbreaking because we as providers know the damage that that does to the kids. And so I think it goes back to if a mom thinks you're going to call Child Protective Services on her, which I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for that because there is, and we all know what it is. But if a mom thinks you're going to call Child Protective Services, she's going to do exactly what she says. She's just going to pull her kids away and not work with you anymore.
And that's what happened when we approached them with
Yeah.
the thing.
If they feel like they are being berated or judged, or if they feel like they're a bad parent, they're going to feel like you're just one more person making them feel terrible about themselves. So I would try to approach that differently. I would try to approach it as, we think your kid is great. We know you love your kid. We know you're trying your very best. And try to identify with where they are and get them to trust you. Form a friendship with them if you can, but get them to trust you. And that takes a little bit of time. Like nobody's just automatically going to respond to you well, especially when they're traumatized and you're one more person trying to get them to do something. But if you can help those parents make the mental connection between your kids are going to behave, they are going to listen to you, they are going to respect you, your life is going to be easier. And also, your children are going to be better adults so that you're not dealing with chaos for the rest of your days. If you can get them to make those connections that look, feeding them, being consistent, putting them to bed will make your life better because it will. If you can get them to realize that, they'll do it because then there's something in it for them.
Right. That's a good one. Let them know there's something in it for them. Because I know too often as providers, we tell them, okay, this is what we're trying to do, right?
Right.
Um,
Well,
we
they don't care about that. They don't care about you.
exactly
Right.
right.
And shamefully, some of the time I don't think it's ever that they well, there are some, they're a minority, but there are some that I've met that truly don't care about their children.
I met them too. Yes.
They're more rare.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also certainly seen parents who care about their children, but care about their addiction more. We've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of parents, especially just the way America is right now, I think they're just exhausted and they have no guidance and no mentorship. And they're just uneducated. And so for those people, if we can get them to connect in their mind, doing what we're telling you to do will make your life easier. It's not that we want it, it's that we think this will help you. This will make your life better. If we can get them to see it as value added to their own life, they'll be more likely to do it.
Do you have those instructions in your book? Because I'm ready to order.
I actually don't have that in there. I really don't. But I think that's why I've been doing podcasts because all kinds of stuff like this keeps coming up.
A little bit about your book, because with your expertise and everything that you said resonate with me, and I know with other providers and other listeners that listen to my podcast. Tell us a little bit about your book that what could benefit us, right? What's in there for us? And I know providers that are also foster parents, right? And one of she's now my close friend. She's like a sister. She's like, I've been doing this for 35 years, right? And I have 8 kids. I'm like, you gave birth to 8 kids? She's like, no, I gave birth to two, but the rest of them are adoptive. Her foster parent, right? She was foster kid and then she
She took them
adopted them.
home. That's right. The girl took them home.
She took them
Um,
home.
what I really want and what I hope my book does, number one, I hope it makes people feel hopeful because I think there's always hope. It's just that sometimes we lose sight of the hope or we're too exhausted or traumatized to experience it. But I really want people to feel hopeful because I think they have a lot of reason to feel hopeful. So that would be step one is the hope. I think the second thing, other than the hope, would be just empowerment. I think some of what you and I talked about at the beginning, like feeling like, yes, you can go to school and you can advocate for your children. I think that's really important. And so I want parents to feel hopeful. I want them to feel empowered. And I also want them to have some idea of where to start because I think a lot of people really truly don't know where to start. That's why I wrote it. Like this was something that a friend of mine actually runs. She runs all the a nonprofit that controls all the Smart Start dollars for my community. And she wrote the forward for my book. And one of the things that she said was, this is a story Paula's been carrying around for a long time, and she needed to get it out of her. And that's really true. Like, I feel like I went through a lot. My kids went through a lot. In my view, we're all doing pretty good right now. But this was something that I had to get out of me. And so I've kind of given it up to the universe. Like, I don't know what my story is going to do. I mean, I could be a hated citizen by the time people read the whole story. I have no idea.
Right.
But but I want it to help people, and I want people to feel hopeful, because that same spark in me that said, as a law student, I just want to help other people, that's still very much what I want to be. And so I'm really hoping that this book does that.
Okay. I'm gonna look for you, but if there's a link that you could let us know and I could share it with the rest of the providers. There's over 4,000 educators in Connecticut. So I would love to share it with them, right? We have like a Monday morning meeting that we does. I actually before you came on yesterday, I sent it to Eva Bermudez that we do the Monday morning meeting for the providers in the state of Connecticut to inform them. So I asked her, just to let you come on just to share. And when she sees it, she's going to see more. That you come on so you could share with other educators and the passion that you share. And that you got to see the glow about you when you talk about your kids, when you speak about your children and your work. And I thank you because I'm telling you, it makes me want to cry. I wish I could go back in time and meet someone like you. I really do.
I wish that you had had that too, Tashiana. I bet you anything you've been that for your own kids. And I bet you anything you're doing it for children every single day. That's how you wound up doing what you're doing now.
I do, but lots of people are facing the same thing. And there's a lot more people that need you and a lot of providers that are going through it too as well. And I'm just like you said, your book to motivate them to let them see that you can do it, right? Hopeful. I've been through it and this is what I did and this is what I'm struggling with, so you can do it. Thank,
You're welcome.
thank you. I'm gonna ask Eva, like I back to it, to say, if you don't mind, I share your information with her. It's a Zoom meeting we do every Monday. If you could come on and just share your story with the rest of the providers.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, yes, I'm gonna talk to her. I'm gonna call her once we get off because we had legislative session. So we have to go there and we have to advocate and more funding for providers. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you, Tashiana. And thank
Likewise.
you. Thank you for telling me what happened to you. I'm so sorry. And I promise that the whole legal profession is not that way.
It's all right. I learned to deal with it. I learned not to trust them, but I learned to deal with it.
I know, but that's also a lesson you shouldn't have had to learn, and neither should anybody else.
Right.
Absolutely no one should have to live like that.
If I went through it, how many other
It's exactly what we're seeing with these Epstein files right now. There's not a woman alive who should have to live like that.
right. And that's why I said, that a lot of people seen it like I tell you, you're the first person I share that with the lawyer. Never, never. Because I feel embarrassed. I
You
feel like
should not.
I feel like I was selling myself just to get my son back. So,
First of all, that goes back to what I said about guilt and shame. Guilt and shame is a worthless emotion that's never helped anybody. Second of all, any mother would have done exactly what you did. I would have done the exact same thing if it was a choice between what do I have to do to get my child back? I would have done the exact same thing. And the sad thing is, he knew that, because that's how any woman would have reacted. And that's what makes him such a scum. I don't know where he is now, but I hope he's dead. I hate men like that.
I the same. I don't know where he is either. I didn't even look at my file because at the end of the day, he's like, "Well, you lost your son. I'm sorry for your loss." That was the end. That was how he handled it. And the judge is like, "I'm sorry," and then the judge retired right after the death of my son. Long story short, years later, the dad ended up killing himself. He went to jail for killing his baby mother, which I was trying to prevent. So he went to jail for killing her, right? And then later on, he ended up committing suicide. Get the easy way out, right?
Yep.
They always do.
They always do.
They always do. But I'm not a victim. I'm a
No,
survivor,
100%.
and
All
that's
right, darling. I hope we
all
get to
right.
talk again. It was
You
so
want
nice to
to
meet you.
likewise. You have a blessed day.